Have you ever wondered why um, the crop that looks the absolute most profitable on paper can sometimes just completely bankrupt a small farm?
Yeah, while the supposedly less profitable crop acts like this unbreakable savings account.
Exactly. Today, we are unpacking the true financial weight of your crop choices. And you really want to stick around because the key takeaway near the end of this discussion is a specific game-changing strategy that could free you from corporate processing monopolies.
It's a big one.
Welcome to another podcast episode brought to you by AGS Agriculture Global Solutions, where we discuss sustainable oil palm cultivation topics. We are pulling our insights today from a deeply detailed research paper. It was published in the journal Economic Botany back in 2004.
Right, and this research takes a really hard analytical look at the cultural and financial considerations for farmers operating in tropical regions. It's specifically comparing different long-term land use options.
And the mission of this deep dive is to figure out what those findings actually mean for your daily operations. We want to take all this complex economic data and, turn it into practical field instructions for you, the oil palm farmer.
To do that properly, we really need to bypass the laboratory statistics, right? We need to look at the physical realities of land management because you are the one out there making high-stakes decisions about your land, your labor, and, well, your family's future.
Absolutely. And that establishment phase really dictates the future success of any plantation. So I think we should start there.
Yeah, let's do that. In the agricultural systems analyzed in this research, everything basically begins with understanding the traditional rotating fallow system. I mean, you don't just drop seeds into a mature forest and wait for a harvest.
Right. The progression of clearing that land is just an incredible drain on time and calories. I want to break down why that sequence actually happens the way it does. The farmer starts by slashing the underbrush, which opens up the ground level.
Yeah, but then comes felling the much larger canopy trees. And that felling process is physically dangerous, but it's biologically necessary. You have to get sunlight directly to the soil.
Right. And then after that, the vegetation has to dry out completely, right?
Exactly. It has to dry so it can be burned. And the burn is not just about clearing physical debris to make way for planting. It's much more active than that.
How so? Like, what's actually happening during the burn?
Well, the intense heat initiates this rapid chemical transformation. It converts all that locked up plant biomass into a highly concentrated layer of ash.
Oh, wow. So it's basically treating the soil.
Yeah, exactly. That ash dramatically spikes the soil pH, making it less acidic, and it delivers a massive, immediate flush of phosphorus and potassium right to the topsoil, which is exactly where the new roots will need it.
That makes total sense. But I think a lot of people outside of agriculture look at all that sweat, the clearing, the burning, the meticulous debris removal as just a sunk cost, like this massive penalty you pay before you even start the business of farming.
Right, but the research highlights that the land clearing phase is actually an active agricultural period in its own right. Farmers don't just leave that freshly burned, nutrient-rich topsoil empty while they wait for long-term crops to mature.
Oh, they plant right away.
Yeah, initial fast-growing field crops are planted immediately, usually things like upland rice, maize, or cassava, and these crops serve a dual purpose for the farmer.
Okay, so what's the first purpose?
Well, first, they stabilize the soil structure to prevent the heavy rains from washing away all that valuable ash. And second, they provide immediate caloric sustenance and local market income for the farmer.
Okay, so they're getting fed and making some money right off the bat.
Exactly. And all while the slow-growing perennial crops like oil palm or rubber are planted in the exact same plot. They're just slowly taking root in the understory.
It's essentially a relay race. Your short-term field crops are running the first leg, keeping you fed and funded, before they basically hand the baton over to the heavy-hitting perennials like oil palm that will run the marathon.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And during that entire first leg of the relay, the labor demands are just relentless. You are actively weeding to ensure the fast-growing pioneer weeds don't choke out your cash crop.
Right, because everything wants to grow in that ash.
Exactly. Plus, you are applying supplemental fertilizers and herbicides. And perhaps most exhaustively, you are basically acting as a full-time security guard.
Wait, a security guard? For plants?
Yeah, I mean, young, vulnerable perennial shoots are a total magnet for wild pigs, rodents, and other pests. Protecting that plot requires a massive upfront investment of your personal energy, day and night.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is all before a single profitable harvest is realized.
Okay, so the land is prepped, the field crops have run their leg of the relay, and the heavy-hitting perennials are firmly in the ground and maturing. I guess we transitioned from moving dirt to measuring dollars.
That's right, the money phase.
So how do we actually evaluate the financial returns of these long-term crops?
We use the primary financial metric established in the study. That metric is net present value, NPV.
Okay, NPV. Can you define how that works for our listeners?
Sure, basically, NPV calculates the current total value of a future stream of payments. It takes every dollar you will make from a crop over its entire 25-year lifespan, and it subtracts all your lifetime costs.
So costs like the early herbicides, all the way to the harvesting tools later on.
Exactly. It takes all of that and adjusts that final number to reflect what that profit is actually worth in today's money. It accounts for inflation and the time value of money.
That makes a lot of sense. So when we run those numbers using MPV, I want to look at how oil palm stacks up against traditional options. Things like intensive rubber or rattan.
Well, on a strictly per land unit basis, oil palm completely dominates the NPV analysis. It generates the highest absolute financial return per hectare over its lifespan.
Oh, wow. What comes in second?
Rattan gardens come in second. Rubber production, however, reveals this massive discrepancy between physical yield and financial reality.
Interesting. Let's drill into the rubber data for a second. The paper measures those yields in tons per hectare, right?
Yeah, exactly. The researchers evaluated both intensive and low-intensity rubber farming models. Intensive farming produces around 1.25 tons per hectare,
Okay, and the low intensity.
whereas the low-intensity, more traditional model yields about 0.84 tons per hectare.
So at 1.25 tons per hectare with the intensive model, you are physically pulling a lot of product out of the field. But you said the financial story kind of collapses.
It does. It collapses when you look at the labor mechanics. Both the intensive and low-intensity rubber models actually resulted in a negative NPV in this analysis.
Wait, really? A negative NPV? So the farmer's basically losing money over the lifespan of the crop?
Exactly. And the reason is entirely tied to the mechanics of rubber tapping. Tapping requires you to be in the field before dawn, making these really precise surgical cuts in the bark.
Right, because you need to get the latex flowing.
Yeah, the cuts have to be deep enough to access the latex channels, but shallow enough to avoid permanently scarring the tree's cambium layer. Then you wait for the latex to flow, collect it before the heavy afternoon rains can wash it away, and, well, then you have to chemically coagulate it and physically press it into sheets.
And you have to do that every single day.
Every single day. The sheer volume of daily hours required just to extract and stabilize the product drives the labor costs so incredibly high. The farmer is effectively paying themselves less than a standard local daily wage.
Man, the effort totally outpaces the income. That really puts the massive NPV of oil palm into perspective. I mean, oil palm doesn't require that daily microscopic labor.
No, it doesn't. But to understand the true value of oil palm, we need to map out its life cycle. It's a highly predictable, long-term biological curve.
Okay, walk me through that timeline.
Well, after the initial planting, the first harvest typically occurs in year 4. As the palms mature and the root systems fully integrate into the soil profile, the yields climb and then they plateau.
And how long does that peak production last?
Yeah. They remain remarkably constant during that peak production window, which is roughly between years 13 and 19.
But then the biology starts to work against you, right? The paper notes that yields decrease by 15% in years 20 to 22.
Yeah.
And then they drop by a full 30% by years 23 to 25.
Exactly. And that drop isn't just about the tree getting tired, it's actually structural. By year 20, an oil palm can easily reach 12 to 15 meters in height.
Oh, wow. So harvesting that must be a nightmare.
It is. Harvesting requires wielding an incredibly long, heavy sickle pole, staring straight up into the canopy. The physical strain on the harvester increases exponentially, meaning fewer trees are harvested per hour.
And I imagine it's harder to be accurate when you're looking up 15 meters.
Right, the accuracy drops completely, causing more loose fruit to scatter and be lost in the underbrush. Furthermore, 20 years of intense nutrient extraction takes a huge toll on the soil profile, even with regular fertilization.
Right, just pushing nutrients up a trunk that tall is tough.
Exactly. The sheer logistics of moving nutrients up a 15-meter trunk to develop heavy fruit bunches becomes biologically inefficient.
So if we synthesize this data, oil palm wins the MPV battle because it offers a highly concentrated, massive production of a very valuable global commodity on a relatively small footprint.
Yes, exactly.
If your absolute only constraint as a farmer is the acreage you hold, and your goal is maximum raw financial output per hectare, oil palm is definitely the mathematical winner.
Without a doubt.
Which leads to the totally obvious question. Why wouldn't every single farmer just bulldoze their entire property and plant wall-to-wall oil palm?
Because your farm operates in the real world, subject to extreme logistical friction. Smallholder farmers operate under severe constraints, and land area is actually rarely the tightest bottleneck.
Right, so what is the real bottleneck then?
The true constraint is labor. Your time, your physical endurance, and your family's capacity to work are finite. You can't do it all.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Furthermore, you are selling into a global commodity market where prices are constantly fluctuating based on geopolitical events and supply chains that are thousands of miles away.
So measuring success purely by total yield, or NPV, ignores the reality of the farmer's daily grind. We need a metric that accounts for that friction.
Exactly. The researchers utilize the benefit-cost ratio, BCR, to capture this. BCR, along with evaluating the pure returns to labor, provides a much more accurate reflection of operational reality.
Okay, so how does BCR work?
BCR measures the ratio of the present value of benefits to the present value of costs. In really simple terms, for every unit of physical effort, chemical expense, and time you put into the field, how much compounding value do you actually get back?
Okay, and this is where the data completely flips the script, right?
It totally flips it. When measured by returns to labor in BCR, traditional rattan decisively beats oil palm. The data shows rattan achieving a BCR of 2.1 Cs, while oil palm sits at a strong but significantly lower 1.59.
Wow. So the crop that generates less total revenue per hectare actually provides a much higher return on your sweat equity.
Precisely.
I want to look at how fluctuating market pricing factors into this dynamic, because oil palm is structurally rigid.
Oh, it is an incredibly rigid system. Getting oil palm to that productive year 4 mark requires very high early capital investment.
Right, all the weeding and guarding we talked about.
Exactly. Because you have sunk so much money into seedlings, fertilizers, and pest control, your profitability is hypersensitive to market dips. The research indicates that oil palm actually loses its top NPV spot entirely if global commodity prices drop by roughly 35%.
Oh, wow. And that rigidity is compounded by a brutal biological clock, isn't it? Because we are talking about fresh fruit bunches, FFB.
Yes, FFB. The moment you cut an FFB from the tree, a biochemical degradation process begins immediately.
Wait, really? Like the second you cut it?
Yeah. Bruising the fruit during harvest triggers the release of enzymes that rapidly break down the oil into free fatty acids. And if those fatty acids build up, the overall oil quality plummets.
So you're basically on a timer.
You are. This means the moment you sever that stalk, you have a 24 to 48-hour window. You must transport and sell that FFB to a processor immediately.
And I guess that means regardless of what the spot market price happens to be that day.
Absolutely regardless. You have zero leverage to negotiate. You either accept the price offered at the mill gate or your crop rots in the back of your truck.
Man, focusing only on NPV is like buying a high-maintenance sports car. Yes, oil palm performs incredibly well and generates massive speed on a smooth track, but it requires constant, expensive inputs, specific fuel, and if anything goes wrong, the engine just seizes.
That's a great analogy.
And traditional crops are more like a low-yield but completely bulletproof savings bond. They just sit there, requiring almost no maintenance, giving you total tactical flexibility.
The mechanics of rattan farming perfectly illustrate that flexibility, actually. Once established in the forest cavity, rattan requires almost zero daily labor. It essentially acts as a living biological bank account.
So if the market crashes, you're not sweating it.
Exactly. If market prices for rattan furniture or materials crash, the farmer isn't forced to sell at a loss. The plant's senescence, its natural aging and dying process, takes years. You simply leave the rattan growing in the trees until the market recovers.
Wow, it safely stores its own value without any warehousing costs. And I assume it works in reverse too, right?
What do you mean?
Like, if the farmer faces a sudden, catastrophic expense, a medical emergency, a failed rice harvest, or maybe unexpected equipment failure, they can advance the harvest. They can walk into the forest, cut the rattan, and generate immediate emergency cash.
Oh, absolutely. That level of strategic buffering is just mathematically impossible with a highly perishable crop like FFB.
Right.
Now, this research also touches on complex operational dynamics in these regions, things like land access disputes, heavy external pressure from commercial interests, and fluctuating local policies regarding land use.
Which are huge factors.
They are. But as an advisor, the goal isn't to litigate those dynamics, but to recognize them as concrete business risks. Operating a farm means navigating intense competing interests that go far beyond basic agronomy.
Which means we need to translate all of this data into a defensive, profitable strategy. Having analyzed the raw, concentrated profit potential of oil palm and the resilient, risk-absorbing flexibility of traditional crops, how do you navigate these choices on your land tomorrow?
Well, first we have to directly address the leverage imbalance. The biggest hurdle for an independent oil palm farmer is the bottleneck at the processing mill.
Right, because of that 48-hour window.
Exactly. Massive corporate processors use the perishability of FFB to their absolute advantage. They know your clock is ticking. In some cases, they actually refuse to buy from independent smallholders entirely, preferring only their own massive plantation yields.
And if they do buy, they know you're desperate.
Yeah, they use your desperation to force unfair grading and pricing right at the weighbridge.
So if the perishability of FFB is the choke point, the logical countermeasure is removing that choke point at the farm level. But is microprocessing even viable for a smallholder?
It is, actually, and it's the single most important strategic shift available right now. The data highlights the emergence of small-scale, independent processing technology.
Oh, really? Like machinery a farmer can actually buy?
Yeah, we are looking at commercially available modular machinery capable of handling zero point 0.5 to 2 tons of FFB per hour. These aren't massive industrial plants.
What do they look like then?
They are scaled-down systems involving a basic steam sterilizer to halt that fatty acid degradation, a rotary thresher to strip the fruit, and a mechanical screw press to extract the crude palm oil.
Wow, so taking control of the extraction phase completely neutralizes that 48-hour rotting window.
It completely changes the entire power dynamic. Investing in one of these units frees you from the restrictions of large-scale industrial processors. Now, instead of selling highly perishable raw fruit at a steep discount, you are producing and storing stabilized crude palm oil, which has a much, much longer shelf life.
So you can actually wait for better market prices.
Exactly. But because the equipment requires capital and power, usually a robust diesel generator or three-phase electricity, the most viable path is cooperative pooling.
Also, teaming up with neighbors.
Yeah, you partner with 3 or 4 neighboring farms to share the initial capital cost and keep the mill running at full capacity.
That makes total sense. It also completely changes the risk profile of planting the crop in the first place, doesn't it? You don't have to clear-cut your entire farm to generate enough volume to interest a corporate mill. You can plant just enough hectares to feed your own 2-ton-per-hour press.
That leads directly into the second piece of actionable advice for tomorrow: risk-spreading land management. Do not let the lure of oil palm's high NPV convince you to eradicate your traditional agroforestry systems. You must treat your physical acreage exactly like a financial portfolio.
Asset diversification.
Yeah.
Just like the stock market.
The principles are completely identical. Use oil palm as your high-risk, high-yield growth stock. It is a fantastic cash generator when global prices are strong and your logistics are tight.
Right.
But you must maintain diverse, low-maintenance traditional crops like rattan or specialized timber alongside it. Those traditional crops are your low-yield, zero-risk treasury bonds. They are your ultimate insurance policy.
So if the bottom falls out, you aren't ruined.
Exactly. If the global commodity market crashes or a localized pest outbreak decimates your oil palm canopy, your traditional crops are the living bank account that guarantees your family stays afloat while the market corrects itself.
You don't optimize for just the best-case scenario. You build a system that survives the worst-case scenario. The goal isn't to blindly chase the highest number on an economist's spreadsheet. Your goal is to engineer a farm that is highly profitable in the boom years and stubbornly resilient when the friction of the real world hits.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, this has been an incredible breakdown of the mechanics behind the money. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over as you walk your fields tomorrow. If small-scale independent FFB processing units truly become the standard for farmers worldwide, how will that shift the global balance of power between local smallholders and massive agricultural conglomerates over the next decade? Thanks for listening.